Okay, folks, so the last video ended a little bit abruptly. I apologize for that. But what I was talking about was refining your search results and remembering to always look sort of all around on the search results page to see what you can do to refine them. So this will look a little different depending on which database you're in, but there's always ways to refine and to find other sources. So I was looking over here at the subject heading list. This is how this is filed under the Library of Congress. And notice there are further ways to sort of refine our results. So maybe I only want to read articles about the Civil War, right? That would be really pertinent to what we've been reading about in class this semester. So I might click here to Civil War. I might click on United States or Abraham Lincoln or Southern States. Any one of these would be a great way to refine your results. And as you'll notice, it also lets me know that there's only 36 articles that relate to the Civil War. So again, it's another fabulous way to keep bringing that search results down to a manageable topic. And you can do this no matter what your search terms were. You're always able to refine, refine, refine. Now, something else I wanted to point out, we haven't talked about this a lot in class yet, but just in case this is useful for you, when you're ready to look for scholarly sources, okay? Now, as you'll read about, and as I think you've read about already, and as we'll talk some more about, scholarly sources are different than just reliable, credible sources. Reliable, credible sources are great, they're really useful, but scholarly sources are specifically written by academic people for other academic people. They are peer-reviewed by other experts in the topic to make sure that they're really on point and very accurate with everything that they're saying. And when you're searching in the databases, there are some ways to make sure that you are only getting scholarly results. So as I mentioned before, no matter what you're looking at, you always want to choose only full text. You can also refine right here in Academic Search Premier to scholarly or peer-reviewed journals. That way you know you're only going to get those scholarly results. Same thing down here. I can refine by academic journals. I could unclick magazines and select academic journals, and then I know I'm only getting articles that were published in an academic journal. So when your assignment says to search for a scholarly source, you know, if you happen to have that in another class or when you're getting ready for our research paper unit, go ahead, click on full text always, click on peer-reviewed or scholarly results, and then you're going to make sure that you're only getting those scholarly sources that you need. Now let's take an example here of a source that looks useful. So here I saw one that I thought looked pretty useful. You can see it was published fairly recently in October of 2013, and it's titled The Long History of American Slavery. So just the title alone tells me that this might be a good source. Now you can see here, again, when you click on a source, we have subject terms that we can search under. So let's say you were interested in, the history of Native Americans and their social conditions. If you click on that heading, it will take you to resources here. Something else you can always check out is the article abstract. This is like a quick description of what the article is about. So you can see here, this actually describes the history of Native American slavery as an extreme form of captivity. So perhaps in your research paper, you'll want to research the historical roots of slavery in the U.S. This might be a good one to look at, okay? Now remember too that it's a good idea to look at the PDF full text version here. That's going to open up the printer friendly one. If you were to try to print it from just the HTML page, you would end up with a really messy printer deal going on and it just would be hard to read and it's not friendly. If you click on the PDF full text, that's going to give you a printer friendly, reader friendly version of the article to check out. Okay. Now something else I wanted to point out, let me move my screen over here, are some of the tools that you can use. So remember, at the beginning of the first video, I talked about making sure that you save your sources. You can create an account and save a source right here. Maybe you'll want to export it. Maybe you'll create a note or a permalink for it. Maybe you'll just print it or add it to a folder. You can email it to yourself. You can see there's all types of options. And they do also offer the citation button. So again, you'll want to double check and make sure that it's correct. You'll want to scroll to the MLA citation, which should be right about here. Now, as I just sort of buzz through this really quickly, this looks perfectly correct to me. I'm an English professor and I read these all the time. I can tell you this one is correct. So after you double check, feel free to just kind of snatch this up by copying and pasting it right into your Works Cited page, and then it's taken care of for you. And then again, if you have your citation for it, if you should happen to misplace the article or you're having trouble finding it, whatever it might be, all you'll need to do is look it up by maybe the author's name and the title, and you'll be able to find it really quickly. So notice at the top of the page, this is where you can create an account to sign in, to create an account for Academic Search Premier, and any article that you find you'll be able to save to a folder. So maybe you'll create a folder titled Essay 2 or research paper and save all the sources you think you might use in there, and that might be really, really useful. So keep in mind that there are ways to sort of make your searches more accurate. Keep in mind all those search tips that you learned in your readings for the week about combining search terms, about using quotation marks around phrases, about using truncation and all those other little tips and tricks to help you get the best searches that you can. So this is a basic search that we're looking at right here. If we wanted to go into the advanced search, you see that we have a few more options to choose from. So we can limit right away to full text. Again, if you only wanted scholarly, you can do it right off the bat. We sort of did this as we worked, but you can try to do it right from the beginning, and that might be more useful for you. Okay, so now I have jumped back to the All Databases page on the library's homepage, and I wanted to quickly show you something in the African American Experience database. So again, I thought this might be a useful database for some of our current projects, and if you wanted to relate your research paper to kind of our topic of the class so far, you certainly could. So this is a really neat database, but I wanted to show it to you because it looks a little bit different than some of the ones we've looked at so far. It almost looks more like a print magazine when you look at it, right? So one of the things we might do really quickly is a quick search. So let's just say we wanted to search for Northup, for Solomon Northup, and see what we get. So we have 7 results here, and you can see some of them look a little bit more relevant than others. This first one here is just a biography of Solomon Northup. I don't know how useful that would be for you because we've really read all of this information already in his own memoir that he wrote. Something I thought was kind of cool is that there's a portrait here of Solomon that we could take a look at. So although this might not be useful for your Essay 2 assignment, I wanted to just point out again the importance of looking on the side here, because let's say you click on this reference articles and you notice, oh, you know what? They have an article about slave badges, and slave badges are actually important in the invention of wings. If you remember, Mama has to get different slave badges from people. She has a forged one that she creates and wears for a while. She gets a letter from Nina while Sarah is gone that allows her to be out on the street. And they actually have an entire article just about slave badges and sort of how they were used. So if you wanted to use that as a historical topic for Essay 2, I actually found that not by searching for slave badges, but by searching for the name of a slave who would have had to use the badges. So sometimes it's not a straightforward search, right? Like I just looked up slave badges. I probably would have found it if I had done that. But don't be afraid to let your research kind of guide you towards your topic. Sometimes just these links on the side can take you in some really useful directions. Okay, I just want to spend the last few minutes talking about doing internet searches because I know this will be the place that many of you will start with your research. So I wanted to give you a few basic tips and tricks for searching online. And the first thing I want you to realize is that not everything you find online is trustworthy, right? I'm sure most of you know this already. And as you'll read about in the Evaluating Websites webpage, there are kind of certain parameters that we want to look for when we're looking at a web page to make sure that it's relevant. So I'm going to again use the example of Solomon Northup. I'm going to put it in quotation marks so that I only am searching for those words in that order next to each other. And of course, the first thing that pops up is Wikipedia. Now, Wikipedia is not all bad. I think it can actually be kind of useful as a starting point, right? Just to get a sense of sort of what's going on with something. And often if you scroll down to the bottom of the page, this is where I actually find it to be the most useful because good Wikipedia pages will provide references. So notice right here, there's an article that they're linked to from the New York Times. I'm going to open it in another tab here. That was published in 1853, and it has to do with the kidnapping case of Solomon Northup. So this is actually a primary document from this time. Now, Wikipedia is not a good source, but this is a good source. So what I'm trying to say is that Wikipedia can be a springboard to some other great sources, okay? And if you were to sort of read carefully through this list, you're going to find some other really great sources that you could look at here. Now, the reason we find Wikipedia to be a little bit untrustworthy is that it can sort of be edited by not just anybody anymore. They've sort of changed that. But it could be edited by many, many people. And if you click on the view history, it shows you all the extensive revisions that have been done already on this article, which is a ton. So it's just not the most reliable, you guys, okay? Now, the reason that something pops up first in a search result like on Google is not because it is the best source. I'm not sure if you realize this. The reason this is popping up first is because this is the thing that most people look at and most people link to. That does not make it the best, right? So what we might want to do is continue to scroll through what we come up with, kind of looking at the titles, looking at the websites, looking for kind of hints and clues as to what the best sources are. Now, if we look at the biography.com site, we might have an idea in mind already that this is going to be a pretty good source, and I would think that too. Some of the reasons for that being, if we use those terms of website evaluation that we read about, we're going to be able to verify that this is indeed a good source. Well, what tells us that? It doesn't exhibit any bias as we read through it, right? It's a very professionally made web page, although some pretty crappy sources can look pretty professional. We know, if we scroll down to the bottom here, we can see when it was updated, okay, what the copyright is on the page. We can see a citation that they actually give you, which is great. And they also offer a contact us. You know, they say right up front, we strive for accuracy and fairness. So if you see something that doesn't look right, go ahead and contact us. Other clues to good websites, if they don't provide a contact, maybe they provide the author's name, right? So it's current, it's relevant, it is unbiased, it seems to be fairly objective. We want to look at our websites with a careful eye because there's a lot of junk out there on the internet, okay? So like right here, Britannica, okay, this sounds like a good source, right? But an encyclopedia is not a good source for a college level paper. This might be a good source for somebody who was in junior high, but it's not necessarily going to be a great source for college level. So we might want to keep looking for something else. Now this is a blog on the Wall Street Journal. I can tell just by looking right here. So is a blog as reliable as a web page that was written? I don't know, right? Here's another questionable one, history versus Hollywood. This is going to be talking about the film versus the actual movie. Now this one, when we think about it, we might not find it to be as reliable as some of the other sources that we're looking at, okay? There's an example that it's actually so disgusting I don't even like to show it, and I won't show it to you, and I won't give you the web address. But there's a page that's maintained by a white supremacist group about Martin Luther King Jr., and it tells despicable lies about Martin Luther King Jr. It says some pretty horrible and untrue things about him. But if you didn't know any better and you just kind of stumbled across it while you were searching, it might look like a legitimate source. So we always want to be very careful and very thoughtful about how we choose our web sources. You know, I also tell students the story of sometimes we have the idea that if it ends in .edu, then it must be a good source, right? Well, when I taught junior high, my sixth graders published web pages that were under the .edu domain. So you could be citing from an 11-year-old and not even realize it. So please be very, very thoughtful whether you're using a database or whether you're using a Google search or an internet search about evaluating your sources and choosing them carefully. So that's the end of the two videos. Please let me know if you have any questions, and good luck with your research.